The 80s were a time of excess and extremes. Music had heavy guitar or none at all. The Cold War arms race escalated, then ended. Computers began to make the world faster. Thanks to the right-wing policies of Reagan and Thatcher, the rich became really rich while the poor got very poor. Cutbacks, deregulation, layoffs, wage cuts, and union busting were everywhere. The conventional wisdom said that unions and the public sector were done for. The conventional wisdom was wrong. When Grace Hartman retired in 1983, CUPE members elected Jeff Rose to step into her shoes. Rose knew from his years as Toronto City Planner and Local 79 President that many of the union's biggest battles were fought in the political arena. Working with Rose was Jean-Claude Laniel, elected Secretary-Treasurer in 1985. Coming from Hydro-Quebec, CUPE 1500, Laniel was a consensus builder who believed in teamwork. Under Rose and Laniel, CUPE would launch a political action strategy more ambitious than any Canadian union had ever mounted. CUPE switched into full campaign mode with the Ways of Winning conference in 1987.
This conference must go beyond simply sharing experiences and learning from one another. It must constitute a watershed, a turning point in this union's fight against contracting out and privatization.
Winning was the word for it. In city after city, CUPE locals convinced municipal councils not to contract services out and to start contracting work back in. When the Mulroney government slashed public services, privatized, deregulated, and pushed through a sweeping free trade agreement with the US, it also did something else. It galvanized activists across Canada. CUPE helped lead a massive progressive movement under the umbrella of the Pro-Canada Network. Record-breaking demonstrations swept the country. CUPE pushed on all fronts, joining a national campaign for quality non-profit childcare, launching the airfare campaign, fighting deregulation, protesting the GST and advocating for tax fairness, and defeating right-wing governments at the ballot box. The right was facing the combined strength of labor and community organizations across the country, and CUPE members needed that strength like never before. BC's anti-union legislation sparked a walkout by 250,000 workers. The New Brunswick government tried to break signed contracts. An 8-day illegal strike by CUPE forced them to back down. And Quebec's government tried to override free collective bargaining. These and other attempts to intimidate public employees just made us stronger and more united. The union's biggest strength? Our members. In 1984, Defending CUPE began training members in grassroots activism. Within 5 years, there were more than 3,000 graduates. More than half of them, women. And CUPE took a powerful lead in digital innovation in 1984 with its first technology officer. By 1989, every regional and area office was computerized, along with the national office. And members were connected nationwide with email and online conferencing through Solinet. CUPE's growing strength and innovation resulted in victories at the bargaining table. Big advances for childcare workers in Ottawa and Nova Scotia. 70,000 Ontario hospital workers winning a jointly trusteed pension plan. At a time when public sector unions were supposed to be in retreat, CUPE was breaking new ground. We launched the airline division when members of the Canadian Airline Flight Attendant Association voted to merge with CUPE. 700 workers were organized at Sick Kids in Toronto, 1,400 workers at UBC. Even library workers in rural Newfoundland were joining CUPE's ranks. CUPE was a leader in negotiating protection for workers on the job. And in 1984, CUPE created a Remembrance Day for workers killed or injured on the job. Today, the National Day of Mourning is commemorated around the world on April 28th. Mourn for the dead, fight for the living. It was a decade of action for women's equality. CUPE held its first National Women's Conference in 1984. The union's first pay equity conference in 1986 made that issue part of CUPE's core bargaining approach. And CUPE took on sexual harassment, winning key rights in workplaces ranging from schools to airlines. But just how much was left to do became tragically clear on December 6, 1989. CUPE member Maryse Lagagnère was among 14 women murdered in a massacre at Montreal's L'École Polytechnique. In the same year, CUPE took a step forward for women, electing Toronto library worker Judy Darcy as Secretary-Treasurer. CUPE also took a hard look at the union's own culture. CUPE began a campaign of anti-discrimination education immediately and created the Equal Opportunities Department. The Rainbow Committee launched, putting diversity and employment equity on the bargaining agenda. And CUPE pioneered the labor fight for equality for LGBT members. From family recognition to survivor pension benefits, the union fought hard in court and at the bargaining table. CUPE joined a court challenge that ultimately changed the definition of spouse and triggered the fall of discriminatory laws across the country. CUPE fought for justice on a global scale, standing up against apartheid and the global arms race. The pundits had predicted the decade would see the decline and fall of public sector unions, but CUPE proved them wrong. The union closed the decade stronger and larger than ever before, with a bold agenda and the political smarts to fight for it.